So today we're going to learn how to design a photo book using Adobe InDesign. Now, InDesign is amazing because you can create something completely custom, but you have to know the fundamentals first. So that's what we're going over today. First, we're going to go over document setup. Then we're going to learn how to create a modular grid. After that, we're going to go over automatic page numbers. We're going to go over importing and placing images. And then finally, I'm going to show you how to add text, both paragraphs and captions. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so here we are in InDesign. I'm going to go to the top left where it says File, scroll down to select New, and then click Document. And when I do that, a new document panel opens. Now, starting at the top, we have a couple of decisions to make. We can leave the intent set to print, that's fine. Number of pages by default is set to 10. That is fine too, although we could go ahead and add more pages just for the sake of it. Honestly, it's not that important right now because it's relatively easy to add and delete pages later on. And so for our purposes, we will just leave it at 28. Facing pages, I'm going to leave that clicked on. Page size and orientation, these are very important. And that is because once you make your grid and you start laying out pages, if you change your page size by even a couple of millimeters, you have to readjust everything. So that's why we want to make sure that whatever page size we choose, we are feeling fairly confident that that's what we're going to stick with throughout the course of the project. Now I'm going to go ahead and change my page size to 245 millimeters by 195 millimeters. That is about 9.5 by 7.5 inches. And the reason I choose millimeters is because it gives you more precision than just going with the standard inches. The orientation is currently set to landscape. I'm going to leave it there. Columns and gutter, I'm going to ignore those for now. Margins, I'm going to set to 21 millimeters. That's a little bit less than an inch. And for bleed, I'm going to set it at 3 millimeters, which is a pretty standard size. However, you may have to adjust this depending on your printer. And now I'm going to click OK, and our document is ready to go. Now the first thing we see is a single blank page. We can zoom out by pressing Command and the minus button. And we can zoom back in by pressing Command and the plus button. But the first thing we want to do is go to this panel on the right and click on Pages. This will allow us to access our master pages and also get a high-level overview of our project, which is blank at the moment. Now let's go ahead and set up our grid. To do that, I'm going to go up here to where it says A Master and double-click on one of the pages. Then I'm going to zoom out by pressing Command and the minus button so that I can see my entire spread in the window. Next, I'm going to go up here to the top where it says Layout and click Create Guides. This is where we're going to define the number of rows and columns that will make up our grid. And the reason we do this to the master page is because we can then apply this grid to any other page in our layout with a single click. Generally speaking, more columns and rows give you more flexibility, but if you put too many in there, it can start to feel a bit busy. It kind of depends on the project. Since this is a photo book and I want the photos to speak for themselves for the most part, I don't expect the layout to be too complex. So I'm just going to create a simple modular grid consisting of 3 rows and 4 columns. I'm also going to adjust the gutter to 6 millimeters. And the last thing I'm going to check is this option on the bottom that says Fit Guide to Margins or Page. Right now it's clicked to Margins and that is how we want it. So now I'm going to click OK and we are almost ready to go. But before I start putting images on the page, I want to set up our automatic page numbers. Now to do that, I'm going to first make sure that we're in our master pages. I can tell that by this blue highlight. And I'm going to zoom in by hitting Command and the plus button. Next, I'm going to open up the Type tool, which you can find over on the left-hand side. It's a capital T. Click that. And you'll notice when you have your Type tool open that your mouse cursor now has a square box with what looks like a capital I. So now I'm going to click and drag just like this. And even though the text frame is empty, you should still see a flashing cursor. So now I'm going to go up here to where it says Type. I'm going to scroll down to where it says Insert Special Character. I'm going to find Markers, and I'm going to find Current Page Number. And now you'll notice an uppercase A is in our text frame. This is exactly what we want. Because we're in our master pages, the page number is only going to show up as this special character. Now, so far, we've only added a page number to our left-hand page. Before adding one to our right-hand page, I want to adjust the positioning of our text box. To do that, I need to find my selection tool, which is located on the toolbar on the left-hand side at the very top. Once I click that, I'm going to go back to my text frame, and I'm going to click and drag each one of the edges so that the text frame fits snugly against each edge of the margin. And now I'm going to hover my cursor over the text frame and press Control-click, and then I'm going to select text frame options. Now midway down, there's a section called Inset Spacing. And what this allows us to do is position our text inside of a text frame any way we want. So I'm going to go ahead and add about 6 millimeters to the top. Whoops. And I'm going to add about 9 millimeters to the left-hand side. And now you can see that our special character sits squarely inside of the text frame. Now before I repeat this process on the opposite page, I'm going to go ahead and change my font. To do this, I double-click on the text frame, I highlight the special character, and then I go up top to the character panel where I can select the font that I want to use. I'm going to go with Saban Next LT Pro. Then I'm going to change my font size from 12 point to 8 point. And now I'm going to hit Escape to get back to my selection tool. Okay, now we have to add automatic page numbers to our right-hand page. So I'm going to scroll over to the right-hand side, and once again, I'm going to select my type tool, this time pressing the letter T on my keyboard. I'm going to draw a text frame to fit squarely in that outside margin. Now I'm going to go up to the menu where it says Type. I'm going to scroll down to find Insert Special Character. I'm going to find Markers, and I'm going to find Current Page Number. Now because this is the right-hand page, I have to change the alignment. So I'm going to go up top to the character panel and select Align Right. Now to access my text frame options, I'm going to use a different method this time by hitting Command B. So now we can do it just like before. I'm going to change the top spacing to 6 millimeters and the right spacing to 9 millimeters. Now I'm going to hit OK. And the last thing we have to do is change the font. So I'm going to highlight the special character. I'm going to go up to my character panel and select Saban Next LT Pro. And then I'm going to change the font to 8 point. And finally, I'm going to hit Escape to get back to my selection tool. Now we can get out of the A master by clicking on any one of the pages below. And once we do that, we can see that our automatic page numbers have been applied. Now the next thing I want to do is add another master page for our bleeds. A bleed is an image that fills the whole page. And because we have page numbers on all of our pages now, if we decide to bleed an image, it'll be sitting right on top of our page number, and in some cases, it might show through. The solution is to create another master page specifically for bleeds. So let's do that now. I'm going to go up to my A master. I'm going to select both pages, and then I'm going to press Control-click. Then I'm going to scroll down and click Duplicate Spread A Master. I can see that we're in our B master because it's highlighted blue. So now I'm going to go down and delete the page numbers from each page. And now that I have two master spreads, I'm going to rename them so it doesn't get confusing later on. To do that, I'm going to hover my cursor over B master and hit Control-click. Then I'm going to scroll down to select Master Options for B master. I'm going to name this one Bleed. And now I'll do the same for the A master. With my mouse cursor hovered over it, I'll hit Control-click, select Master Options for A master, and rename it Grid. All right, we're finally ready to start placing images now. Now this is the fun part. There's a couple of different ways to import images into your layout. But before I do that, I want to get out of my master pages by clicking on any of the pages down below. The reason I didn't click on page 1 is because that is typically where the title page goes. And so I'm going to start to place images on page 2 and 3. First, let's zoom out by pressing Command and the minus button so that we can see our entire spread. All right, so there's a couple of ways to do this. We can import images either by pressing Command D, or we could drag images over from Bridge, Lightroom, or a folder that you have open on your desktop. Most people who teach InDesign will tell you to use the Command D method, but my preference is to drag images over from Bridge. I'll explain why in a minute. Let's first do the Command D method. So as you can see, when you hit Command D, a Finder window opens up, and then you just have to go search for your image. The problem with this method is that you have to know the file name you're looking for. Now, this folder only has about 15 images, but if you're looking through a folder with thousands of images, it becomes very difficult to find the one that you want. Regardless, I'm going to click this image right here and select Open. Now, as you can see, my cursor is holding this thumbnail. all I have to do is hit Option, click, and drag the image onto the page. Oh, by the way, this might be a good time to mention that if you hit W on your keyboard, the grid disappears. And then if you hit W again, the grid reappears. Now I just noticed that I placed the image on page 4, but I want it to be on page 3. So to move it, I'm going to click on the image, hit Command C on my keyboard, scroll up to the page I want to place it on, and hit Command V. But now since I have a duplicate image in my layout, I'm going to go back and delete the first one. Now since the image landed in the middle of my spread, I'm going to go ahead and move it to the right. But while I drag, I'm going to hit the Shift key so that it doesn't move up or down. Now I'm going to zoom in, pressing Command and the plus button so that we can look at the image more closely. Alright, now before we go on, there's an essential concept we have to talk about. You'll notice when I hover my cursor over the image, a little donut icon appears. And when I click it, another frame appears around the image, a brown frame. You can't see it very well from here, so let's zoom in a bit. Now you'll notice that even when you're zoomed in, you can still see the little donut icon because it moves. But yeah, the main thing you want to keep in mind is that when you click the donut, it grabs the content within the frame versus the frame itself. Let me show you what I mean. So if I click this little icon, you'll notice that my cursor turns into a hand. And then if I click and drag the photo, I can move it around within the frame. But the frame itself stays put. And you can tell the edge of the frame by where the photo becomes more dull, right? So now I'm going to release, and I'm going to hit Command Z to bring me back to where I was before. Now another way to access the content within the frame is to hit the letter A on your keyboard. Or, and here's a third option, you could go over to the toolbar on your left-hand side and select the white arrow. That's the direct selection tool. Now, what if you want to move the frame and content around? Well, you can either hit the letter V on your keyboard or select the black arrow right here. And that'll allow you to move the whole thing around, both the frame and the content. So let's zoom out a little bit by pressing Command and the minus button. And let's go ahead and realign this image just like that. Now I'm noticing that the photo doesn't reach the bottom margin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift and Command, and I'm going to drag the image until it reaches the bottom margin, which is the purple line. But when I do that, I notice that the photo is now spilling over onto the left-hand page. So I'm going to hover my cursor over this little square shape, and it's going to become an arrow. And then I'm going to click and drag the edge of the photo until it reaches the edge of the margin on my right-hand page. As you can see, it fits pretty perfectly. But since I cut off some of the image, it's probably a good idea to see if I can improve the crop. So I'm going to click the donut, and I'm going to move the image around so that I can come to a decision about what the best crop would be. Now I'm going to leave the opposite page blank because I'm planning on putting some text there. So let's move down to the next spread. Let's go ahead and import our next image. This time I'm going to drag the image in from Bridge. Now if you don't use Bridge, I highly recommend it, but that's a topic for another video. You can also do this with Adobe Lightroom, by the way. I love this method because you can actually see the images that you're making a selection from. So I think I'm going to go with this image right here. And by the way, these images were all pulled from Unsplash, so shout out to Mo's Design for providing the photos for this tutorial. Now to import this image into our layout, all we have to do is drag it into InDesign. And you'll notice, just like before, that our mouse cursor now has the thumbnail of the image attached to it. So all we have to do is click Option and drag the image. And just like before, the photo is not hitting the bottom margin. So I'm going to press Shift and Command on my keyboard and drag the image until it reaches the bottom margin. And lastly, I'm going to click and drag the frame until it reaches the outside margin. And because this photo is so much different than all of the others in this series, I'm going to leave this opposite page blank, and I may come back to that, but for now, let's just go on to the next spread. So one way to really speed up your workflow is by importing multiple images at the same time. So let's hop back into Bridge and select our next images. By the way, it really helps when you have a lot of images you're choosing from to pre-select using the star rating system, but that's a topic for another video. So for now, I'm just going to choose these two images and I'm going to drag them into InDesign. Now, just like before, there's a little thumbnail attached to your cursor, but if you look closely, there's also the number 2 in parentheses, and that means you have 2 images. So when I'm dragging in multiple images at once, the way I like to do this is by first putting them on the pasteboard. The pasteboard is this gray area outside of your margin. So holding down Option, I'm going to click and drag the first image, and then right below that, I'm going to click and drag the second image. Okay, cool. So because on the previous spread, I had a full page image on the right-hand page, on this spread, I'm going to put a full page on the left-hand page. This is one of those little things you can do that can really help the pacing. Now this time around, I'm also going to bleed the image. And this is super easy because we've already set up a master page for bleed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my master page. I'm going to click on one of the master pages for bleed, and I'm going to drag it onto page 6 of my thumbnails. And as you can see, the page number disappeared. You can also see this reflected on the thumbnail. There's a little B right here to signify that it's linked up to our B master page, and the right-hand side is our A master. So now I'm going to drag this image over, and because it's a bleed, we don't want to align it to our outside margin. We want to align it to our bleed, which is the red line. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it better. And now holding down Shift and Command, I'm going to drag the image until it reaches the red line on the very bottom. And now I'm going to drag the right-hand side until it reaches the page getter. And once again, I'm going to click on the little donut to see if I can get a better crop. All right, let's zoom back out to take a look. Now, because we filled up the entire left-hand side of the page, I want to leave a little bit of white space on the right-hand side. So I'm just going to take this image, align it to my top and right margins, and then holding down Shift and Command, I'm going to drag it until it meets the bottom margin. Now holding down the Command and plus button, I'm going to zoom in to take a look. Now, as you can see, it fits pretty well, but I'm noticing that it doesn't quite reach the bottom margin. So I'm just going to nudge it a little bit so that we can align it perfectly. Notice how when I nudge it, it won't quite snap to that bottom margin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to View. I'm going to find Grids and Guides, and I'm going to find Snap to Document Grid. And now when we try again, you'll notice that it snaps to that bottom margin. And the last thing I'm going to do is click and drag at the left-hand side of the photo to meet the document grid. All right, let's zoom out so we can take a look. Now on this next spread, I'm going to go a bit faster. So let's go ahead and hop into Bridge. I'm going to pull these 4 images. I'm going to drag them into InDesign. I'm going to drop them onto my pasteboard. And I like what we did on the previous page, so I'm going to take that idea and build on it for this spread. So first I'm just going to roughly drag the images into place. And now zooming in a little bit, we can start to fine tune. Starting with the left-hand page, I'm going to repeat the same process as before. As you can see, the grid is doing all the work. All I'm doing is fitting the photos into the spaces available. Now I noticed when I placed these that they didn't line up perfectly, so now I'm just going to go back and fine tune. And zooming back out, we can take a look at what we've done. All right, it's looking pretty good. But the last thing I want to do before wrapping this up is just add in some placeholder text. Now, it's not uncommon when you're laying out pages to not have final text available, but it can be super helpful just to add in fake text. And this just allows us to visualize how the text is going to look so that when the actual text comes in, we can slide it right into place. Now I'm going to place a couple of text elements on page 2. First off, I'm going to add a text frame. To do that, I'm going to hit the letter T on my keyboard to activate the type tool. Now I'm going to create a text frame that aligns to this far right margin. And since I don't have any actual text to place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the menu where it says type. Then I'm going to scroll down to fill with placeholder text. And just so I can stay consistent with all the fonts across my document, I'm going to change the text to Saban Next LT Pro. And now I'll change the font size to 9 point. As you can see, changing the font size created a lot of extra space in our text frame. So I'm just going to go fill it with more placeholder text. And now I'm going to give this text a little bit of leading, which is basically the line space. Right now it's set to 10.8, and I'm going to change it to 12 point. So this is looking okay, but what I'd really like to do is play around with the alignment. Right now it's set to left aligned, and I want to see what it looks like fully justified. All right, that looks a lot better. Now there's some overset text here, but since this is placeholder text and it really doesn't matter at this point, I'm just going to leave it as is. And that's something we could talk about in another video. The next thing I'm going to do is add a title. So once again, I'm going to hit T to activate the type tool. And I'm going to draw a text frame just like that. Now I'm going to type in a title. And we'll go ahead and change the font size to 65 point. It's still set to Minion, so we'll go ahead and change it to Saban Next LT Pro. And since this is a title, I'm going to change it to bold. That looks a little too heavy, so maybe I'll try Demi, which is a semi-bold. All right, things are starting to look better now. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a caption for this image right here. So we're going to hit T to activate the type tool, and I'm going to draw a text frame down here at the bottom. Now I'm just going to fill this with a couple of lines of placeholder text. It gave me a bit more than I wanted, so I'm just going to delete that extra line. Now if you notice, the type is sitting at the top of the frame as opposed to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over this text frame and I'm going to hit Command B. This brings up text frame options, and I'm going to go down here to vertical justification and select Align Bottom. Now my caption is aligned right along that bottom grid. And last, we're just going to change the font to Saban Next LT Pro. And we're going to make it 8 point. Okay, that looks all right. Maybe I'll just fill it in with just a couple more words here. I want to look at this entire spread, and right now it's cut off on both sides. So I'm going to go up here to View and click Fit Spread in Window. So I think it's looking pretty good. And if you notice, everything is aligned to the grid. Now going down to the next spread, I'm going to show you a little trick. We can copy this text frame here hitting Command C, and then going to the next page, you can hit Shift Option Command and then press the letter V. That's going to paste your text into place, meaning it'll place your text on the exact same spot as the page you copied it from. So that's a nice little tool to save time. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste the captions here too, but now it's aligned to the bottom margin, so I'm going to hit Command B and choose Align Top. And because there's two images on this spread that we need captions for, I'm going to hold Shift and Option and drag the text frame, which will create a duplicate. Now this is fine because it's placeholder text, and we're really just looking to see how it's going to look on the page. So that's it for today. I hope you like this video. There's going to be a lot more coming. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.